Today we will discuss about the persistent techniques. So in operating system there are two modes of operations out there. One is user mode, which is client, and kernel mode, which is server. And all the applications and services will run in the user mode, and through application interface they interact with the kernel mode. So in the kernel mode there are many operating system services may be there, namely scheduler, memory manager, IO device manager, file system, system security, and graphic system. And dispatcher will schedule the process for execution. The kernel will interact with the hardware. So the user mode is concerned with actual interface between user and system. It controls things like running applications. So kernel mode is concerned with everything running in the background. So it controls the hardware. System calls are used to change mode from the user mode to kernel mode. So kernel is a software code which resides in the central core of the operating system. Whenever the operating system boots, so kernel is the first part of the OS to load in the main memory, and it remains in the main memory till the system is shut down. The kernel code is usually loaded in the protected area of memory, and all the user programs cannot access that memory. The kernel performs its task like executing all the process, handles the interrupts. And then kernel does not interact directly with the users, so it interacts using shell. So kernel includes scheduler, supervisor, interrupt handler, memory manager. So scheduler, it allocates kernel processing time to various processes. So supervisor will provide permissions to the process to utilize the system resource. And interrupt handler, it handles all the requests from the hardware devices. Memory manager, it allocates space in memory for all the users of kernel space. System call. So system call is a way in which the computer program requests a service from the kernel of the operating system. So application program is a user process, and due to security reasons, user applications are not given access to resources, privileged resources. So when they need to do any IO operation or any memory, so it requests the operating system to initiate all this. So this is done through system call. System calls are also called software interrupts. So here the starting of the operating system, so how the execution happens. So CPU in real mode from BIOS initialization, and then master boot record followed by bootloader, and then early kernel initialization. And all this runs above the top of the CPU in real mode and CPU in protected mode run above the hardware. So in the CPU in protected mode, so kernel is initialized and first user process comes and avail the kernel services. So the switching between two modes happens. BIOS. So it is stored in the ROM. We name that as firmware on the PC motherboard. So BIOS can be accessed through initial booting process by pressing delete key or F2 or F10. The firmware cycles through all the storage devices and looks for the bootloader. And then if bootloader is found, the firmware hand over the control to the computer. So in the bootloader, the presence of operating system information will be there. So UEFI. So UEFI stands for Unified Firmware Interface. So it does the same job as BIOS, but with one basic difference. It stores all the data about initialization and startup in a .EFI files. So .EFI file is stored on a special partition called EFI system partition. So EFI will support drive up to 9 zettabytes and provide faster booting time, and has a discrete driver support, and then secure boot, and it runs in 32-bit as well as in 64-bit. So file system. So file system, any computer file is stored on a storage medium with given capacity. So each storage will have a linear space for reading as well as for writing. So a sector is a group of bytes, especially 512 bytes are minimum addressable unit. For example, 101040 on hard drive will be represented as sector 3 and offset as 16. So there are different Windows file system, FAT and then NTFS. FAT, file allocation table, and then NTFS is new technology file system. So fact table was, since it's from 1980, it consists of file system descriptor and block allocation table. And NTFS was introduced in 93 with the Windows NT. The FAT32 file system cannot store individual files larger than 4 GB, but NTFS system can do. Compared to FAT32, NTFS file system have a higher disk utilization and can manage disk space more effectively. So this is the difference between the FAT versus NTFS. So in terms of maximum file name, maximum file size, and then folder encryptions, fault tolerance, security level, and then compression, conversion, compatibilities. So persistent techniques. So persistence, self-initiation. So file starts its execution during the system reboot. So we may know the startup folder. For the XP, it is C document settings and then particular user profile and then startup menu, program and startup. And for Windows 7 and above versions, it is under the username, app data, and then Windows start menu. So most of the startup services information will be loaded in this path. And for all users, and this is for a specific user and this is for all users. So in all users, we have for higher versions of Windows, it will be under Microsoft Windows start menu, program startup. And auto start registry. So in the user level as well as in the kernel level, user level as well as in the host level. So in the user level, so all this information will be present in the registry. To access the registry, we can use the regedit command in the command window. So mostly the user level runs in the path Windows current version run, and which runs for many times whenever the system boots. And for the run once, it runs only once for the first booting alone. So for the registry, so for the user login page, and then it can be in Windows login. So whenever before login comes, and when a malicious code has to be executed, and it can be when it is put under this path, it starts before the Windows getting login. And for the Explorer, it can be under current version policies Explorer and then run. And in every Windows logon, when you want to notify, there is one folder, and when a malicious file wants to execute, it can be present in that path. And auto start registries, mostly it under this classes. So there are different classes in the registry. So local machine and then root classes, and there the path of the image or any system can be provided under the system32 drivers. So task scheduler. So what it does, it creates a persistence at specific time with specific condition. So services mostly it will be located under local machine, system, and then services. And for the local machine, for the run services once or run multiple times. So hidden path. So hidden path mostly it is present under the Windows current version, Explorer, and advanced. So temporary folder, we have the C document settings, local settings in the temp folder. So these are all the places where the malicious code will be resident to show its malicious behavior. System temp folder and temporary internet files. Thank you.